Is director's report.
Yes. First, let me tell you about what the City Council has done since your last meeting. They've had two meetings in March, on the 4th and the 18th. On March 4th, the Council passed a resolution to terminate the offer of dedication for the Horton Street bypass and vacation of the portion of the Sherwin-Williams site that was contemplated for construction of the bypass. This was part of the Chiron PUD that was approved back in the 1990s. Chiron subsequently decided not to build the bypass, and therefore Sherwin-Williams has asked that the offer of dedication be terminated. Under the terms of a memorandum of understanding that was signed in 1994, the city is obligated to quitclaim any interest in the property if the bypass is not under construction by the end of 2010, which obviously it wasn't. Therefore, the city was obligated to terminate its interest in this potential street right-of-way. This action is part of the current efforts to clean up the title to the property before moving forward with the development. And on a related note, I'd just like to let you know that we've been told by the Sherwin-Williams developers that they expect to submit an application probably in May, within the next couple of months. Also on March 4th, the council introduced the first reading of an ordinance to amend the planning regulations to add standards for emergency shelters and to make the regulations for supportive housing and transitional housing consistent with those of other residential uses. This ordinance, as you may recall, was reviewed and recommended for adoption by the Commission at your January 23rd meeting. The council passed the ordinance on March 18th, and that means it will take effect on April 17th. Also on March 18th, the council approved the annual progress report on implementation of the general plan, including the housing element in calendar year 2013. This was previously reviewed and approved by the Commission at your February 27th meeting, and your comments at that time were incorporated into the report that went forward to the council. The report will now be submitted to the Governor's Office of Planning and Research and the California Department of Housing and Community Development by the April 1st deadline as required by state law. The council also approved a contract amendment for our building division consultants, West Coast Code Consultants, and a corresponding budget amendment to account for several large development projects that were not previously included in the baseline budget. And finally, on March 18th, the council considered the implications of Emeryville becoming a charter city as opposed to a general law city, which is what we are now, and directed staff to initiate the process to place a charter city measure on the November 4th, 2014 ballot. So you will all have an opportunity to vote on that in November. I don't know that that necessarily will have any implications for us in terms of the Commission's actions or the planning regulations. I do know, though, from when I worked for the City of Oakland, there were a number of things that were different than general law cities. One was, because Oakland, of course, is a charter city, one was that the zoning regulations did not have to be consistent with the general plan. I don't know why you would want your zoning regulations to not be consistent with your general plan, but charter cities don't have to. Charter cities can also do use variances that general law cities can't do. I don't know, again, why you would want to do that, but there may be other implications for planning that I'm not aware of that we may get to deal with if and when we ever become a charter city. In other news, concerning the Planning Commission appointments, as you know, 2 of your terms are expiring on June 30th. That's Commissioner Donaldson and Chair Cardoza. Both of you have indicated that you're seeking reappointment. The council will hold interviews for applicants for these 2 positions, including the 2 incumbents, on June 3rd. If there are too many to interview on June 3rd, they will continue on June 17th. And the appointments are expected to be made at the July 1st council meeting. So if you haven't already, Commissioners Cardoza and Donaldson, if you haven't already been notified about this, you will be by the city clerk. The retreat is now scheduled for Saturday, May 17th. Thank you for all being responsive to our doodle poll. This will be a tour of family-friendly housing. We have identified one project in the Fruitvale section of Oakland that we would like to visit, and perhaps also the Ambassador project here in Emeryville. I'd like to know if you have any preferences for any other sites to visit, and also what time you would prefer for the retreat. We would suggest 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., possibly with a stop for lunch somewhere. And if you have ideas about places you'd like to see, you can either let me know now or send me an email or give me a call. Mainly, I'd like to know right now if that time frame is okay, or if you prefer a start at a different time or end at a different time.
Time frame works for me.
Works for me.
Okay,
Fine with me.
10 to 2?
Yeah.
Will you be inviting the housing committee to come along on this?
Well, we can. I mean, this will be a noticed public meeting of the Planning Commission, so anybody can
see.
come who wants to come. Any member of the public can come, you know, as long as there's room on the bus, and there generally is. Would you like us to invite the Housing Committee specifically?
Yeah, it seems to me you have in the past.
Okay. All right, and I have one more item to let you know about. That concerns 1258 Ocean Avenue. You may recall that this property is owned by Ali Islami. It involves a 2-unit residential project that also involves the demolition of the existing single-family home that is on the site. The project was approved by the City Council in April 2007 and subsequently extended a number of times. A building permit application was filed in January of 2011, and the building permit was subsequently approved and was ready to issue. However, the applicant was unable to secure financing to move the project forward because the lender claimed that he was not the legal owner of the property, which of course confused him. It then came to light that he had been the victim of a crime by which the property was fraudulently sold a number of times beginning on March 8th, 2011, when a deed with a forged signature was recorded at the Alameda County Recorder's Office. We have now received a letter from the Alameda County District Attorney dated February 20th, in which the chain of events that occurred is described. The perpetrators of this crime have now been caught and convicted. They were affiliated with your Black Muslim Bakery.
Oh my God.
And apparently one of them forged a signature on the deed and deeded the property over to the other one. They went down to the Alameda County Recorder and recorded it, and then they transferred it to somebody else and recorded that, and it went through a number of transfers, and it was ultimately sold to an investor in China who had no idea that the property was stolen, that this was all fraudulent. Needless to say, it took Mr. Islami, with the help of the district attorney, a couple of years, 3 years actually, to straighten all this out. But as I said, the perpetrators have now been caught and convicted, and the property title has been returned to Mr. Islami. In deference to him as a victim of this crime, the district attorney says, we are asking for your assistance, you, the City of Emeryville, in placing Mr. Islami's property rights regarding 1258 Ocean Avenue back into the position he held as of March 8th, 2011, which is when the first forgery of the deed occurred. Therefore, at that time, the planning permits were still valid and the building permit was under review. So in response to the district attorney's request, we have decided to basically wind back the clock to March 8th of 2011 and continue to process the building permit application under the building codes that were in effect on that date, which would be the previous building codes. And we expect to issue that permit sometime in the not too distant future. So if you see construction beginning on that site after this long hiatus, when you thought that all of the permits had expired, that is why. If you have any questions, that concludes my report. And if you have any questions on any of the items I've reported on, I'd be happy to answer them.
I do have two questions, but I'm trying to remember one of them. Maybe I missed this, but that Horton Street bypass where the property was, the right-of-way was relinquished or vacated or whatever. Mm-hmm. Why was that never constructed?
Well, the Chiron PUD had two options. One option was to leave Horton Street as it is. The other was to move it over so that it would run next to the railroad tracks. And then the existing Horton Street would become a private road within the Chiron campus. Back in about 10 or 12 years ago, when Chiron decided to build the parking garage on Horton Street, at that time, they came to the city with an amendment to their PUD to revise the boundaries of it, and the parking garage design got bigger than what was in the original PUD, and it basically encroaches into the area where that road would have been. So by getting that garage approved and built, they basically precluded any possibility of ever building the bypass. As a part of that deal, the city did a land swap with them, and we ended up with what we're now calling Horton Landing Park. So essentially, more than 10 years ago, the bypass was precluded by their decision to build that garage.
Okay.
So we could have vacated this easement a long time ago, but they never asked for it and asked us to.
And then my other question is the charter measure that's going to be put on the ballot. What will be the process for drafting that charter, and when will we be able to sort of read the details of that charter?
Do you know the answer to that?
The process will be outlined when staff presents that at the city council meeting, at the next city council meeting. Is that right?
I'm not sure which meeting it will be, but in the future council meeting.
Yeah, I believe it's I believe it is the 2nd April meeting. Although I could be wrong, it may be pushed to the 1st May meeting. Staff will be bringing an item to the City Council, which will outline the process and the time frame by which a charter city how the city would pursue becoming a charter city. And once that information is out, then certainly you would receive the packet along with the rest of the public.
It's tentatively scheduled for the May 6th council meeting. I can tell you that in their discussion at the March 18th meeting, they were mainly focusing on the real estate transfer tax and the fact that charter cities have the ability to increase that tax substantially above what a general law city can charge as a source of revenue. And the thinking was to become a charter city to allow that to occur and basically have the rest of the charter say that we will basically do everything else that a general law city does. Okay. So, I mean, that's the gist of it, but it could contain more than that.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Move on to the next item on the agenda.